Kings and queens. Hello. Before I started this recording, I really wrestled multiple times of trying to come on here and be my usual bubbly, excited, and enthusiastic self with how I greet you all. And I didn't want to do that this time because I knew it wouldn't be transparent. And I knew that it wouldn't be authentic. And last week we talked about healing love, right? And I feel like we are still gonna rock with this topic a little bit longer. I recognize last time we talked about like how to heal. I gave you guys all these therapeutic and non-clinical suggestions and feedback and all that, but I realized that we need to take a step back, because though I acknowledge the importance of we must first recognize and pay attention to the hurt that was instilled or that we experienced, I also recognize that sometimes that's so much easier to say than do. And so I wanted to take this episode to pause and recognize the need for us to really slow down and acknowledge the parts of us that have been hurt, traumatized, betrayed, damaged, or just suffering from the negative aspects of love and relationships. As I said, that tends to be the biggest thing that brings people into therapy, and I'm no exception. Hence my less than bubbly voice right now. This is a week for me of kind of coming to terms with a lot of the different stress and things I've been going through. So, unbeknownst to anyone outside of my immediate support system and circle, these last 2 weeks have been really rough. Between family members being in the hospital and the death of a loved one, there's been a lot of things I had to navigate while also still trying to wear this hat of being the doctoral student. And right now it's crunch time at my internship, and it's also crunch time with my school expectations. It was a lot to juggle, and honestly I was on autopilot, and I did the exact thing that I told you guys not to do, which is to ignore. And for me, it's no secret that my faith plays a role in a lot of my own mental health, and God had to really sit me down and say, you are not walking the talk that you give. And so instead of coming on here and repeatedly trying to re-record to come off brighter and more enthusiastic or greet you guys with this super positive and bubbly persona that I tend to have when I first started recording, I'm just gonna be real and say I don't got it today. I don't got the enthusiasm in my voice, and I don't got the energy. And I realized that one of the things that drains us so much is trying to create energy when we're already on E. And I'm not gonna lie, I am on E. I've been running on E these past 2 weeks, just attending to all the personal, interpersonal, and then the emotional concerns that have come up for me. And I wanted to welcome you guys to do the same, to slow down. Because we, again, cannot heal those parts of us that have been damaged or hurt or traumatized and betrayed by love in relationships if we don't really acknowledge what is going on and what we're feeling. One of the things that got revealed to me a couple of days ago, I was really just studying and rereading about Adam and Eve and their experience in the garden. And something stood out to me that didn't stand out to me before. And it was the fact that they tried to hide not just what they had done, but they were hiding themselves. And I realized that they weren't just hiding themselves, their bodies, because they realized that they were naked, but they were also hiding from their own wounds. For them, the wounds may have been shame and guilt, embarrassment, resentment, even maybe towards themselves. I imagine maybe they hated what they had done so much that they internalized that hate into self-hate. But in essence, they were hiding their wounds. I wonder how many of us are walking around every day with hidden wounds. How many of us are going to work, clocking in, smiling, being bubbly and bright to our colleagues, our coworkers, our friends, and our family, and we are bleeding out from unhealed wounds? How many of us are still trying to meet the expectations of the responsibilities placed on our shoulders, and we look like we're walking just fine day to day, but in actuality, we have a limp? Or maybe there's so many wounds that we're just numb to them all. What wounds are you hiding? I had to be honest with myself, because I'm not going to ask you guys to do that if I'm not doing it. And I had to be really honest about the wounds of unforgiveness, self-hate, resentment, irritability, shame, guilt, embarrassment. I had to be really honest about the wounds of psychological, emotional abuse, trauma, interpersonal traumas. I had to be honest about relational traumas that I even had to overcome, as I've shared with you guys in the most recent episode I did with Shatima. It's not easy. And sometimes our knee-jerk reaction is to hide the wounds instead of addressing them, because it can be so painful to do that. Oh my goodness, it can be so painful. And with the recent loss that I had in my family, it really forced me to sit down and look at a wound that I have been ignoring for a really long time, and that is unforgiveness. And you guys may have heard me talk about how I steer kind of away from strong religiosity, because I feel like a lot of times even Christians just throw Jesus glitter on things and they don't actually address the problem. And I had done that. I had, said the cliche of I have forgiven and I'm moving on. But what I didn't realize until, honestly, the Holy Spirit brought to my attention is that I was holding on to so much anger and resentment from the emotional, psychological, verbal hurt that was inflicted and observed, and how it impacted other loved ones that I was connected to. And I finally had to confront it and take off the smiles, take off the I'm over it attitude, take off of the it's not bothering me. I had to take all of that foolishness, to be quite honest, or for lack of a better term. I had to take that mask off. And I had to really address why that hurt me so much. The things that left the wounds, I had to really uncover. And when you think about uncovering a wound, sometimes there's that pain. Not just the discomfort of when you're removing a bandage, if there's any adhesiveness to it, it's pulling at your hair and skin, and that can feel a little uncomfortable. But also if the wound isn't quite healed yet, or it's been healing in an improper or dysfunctional way, then you have to almost cause more damage trying to expose it. And isn't that the same thing that happens when we're trying to address, uncover, and deal with the parts of ourselves and our hearts, our minds, our emotions that healed improperly? What does that look like? That looks like when we're trying to correct our tendency to avoid and dismiss others in relationships because we cannot handle the risk of being hurt or betrayed again. So we push people away so that we can beat them to the punch. I'll pull a page out of my own book right now. What it looks like when we have to peel back the hidden, the covering that we've been using to hide the camouflage. It looks like when you have to finally confront the fact that not only did something hurt you, but you learn to adapt to it by justifying yourself. For me, that looks like saying, I have every right to feel XYZ. That's a dangerous slope to go down, because when we start to justify and we don't actually process, because yes, you may have every right to feel how you feel, but beyond that, what did it do to you? How do we correct what it did? How do we heal what it did? How it changed you? How it changed your perspective? For example, after this recent loss in my life, I had to realize that I have my own tendency to push people, especially new people, away, because honestly, I didn't want to have to grieve more people. I didn't want to have to lose more people. So I thought to myself, if I just stop making these connections and keep people at a distance, then I won't be so emotionally invested to the point that when inevitably life happens or hurt happens or ruptures in the relationships happen, I won't have to deal with them. That was a blow to the face, to be quite honest. But it was necessary. And I realized specifically how I was doing this with mainly one person in my life that was particularly important and very involved in some of the grief that happened with the loss. And let me tell you, having to be honest with yourself is one thing, but when you have to be honest with yourself to someone else, oh baby, that hit a little different. But I was able to do it. I was able to start making those steps to undoing all this maladaptive coping and maladaptive healing that I did. I heard a story once that a supervisor told me, is that when you break a limb, you can allow it to grow and move on without the proper correction. But then it's no longer correctly able to function. For example, if you break your finger and you allow it to heal in its broken state, you can no longer do the things you typically would do, such as typing or writing. It impacts how you function. And in order to correct it, the only way to correct it so that you can start to function properly and effectively to your full capacity again is to re-break it. That is painful. And yet, it is necessary if we want to grow, if we want to heal, if we want to move on in a healthy way and thrive in our relationships. And I did that. And now, here I am inviting you to do the same. When you think about the areas that you are bearing hidden wounds, also consider what areas in your life, maybe there was a wound, maybe there was a brokenness, and you allowed it to heal, but maybe not in the most healthy or adaptive way? What areas of your life have you decided to heal trauma with substance use? Or healed heartbreak with sleeping with any person that will let you hit? In what ways have you covered up feeling unworthy with overcompensating through success after success and your titles and your accolades, and constantly trying to prove that you're worth enough to your parents or worth enough to be loved, when in actuality all you are doing is covering up the wound of not feeling lovable or loved, the wound of how your people in your life who are supposed to make you feel loved and show you what love is in a correct and healthy way, they dropped the ball. Hell, some of them probably destroyed it. They didn't just drop it, they intentionally broke it. I know that this isn't the most uplifting conversation to have, but how can we actually access joy if we are still being burdened down by undealt with hurt and pain that is impacting us every single day? I want to invite you to take the mask off. I want to invite you to take off the wound dressing. I want to invite you to explore what would it be like if instead of hiding your wounds, you confronted them head on? What would it be like if instead of running away from the trauma and the pain of your past, you turned to it face to face and said, we need to have a talk? Yeah, maybe it's been 5 years ago, 10 years ago, decades ago. But if you really sit down and look at your life, ask yourself, how is it still showing up now? In what ways is it hindering me from living the fullest life I possibly could? I often have clients tell me about these very monumental moments in their life or milestones of great grief or trauma or betrayal. And then they tell me or follow it up with a smile and say, but I'm over that. I laugh when they say it because I had to laugh at myself when I did the same thing. And how I really thought that I was fine and I was doing great. Shout out to my own therapist who helped me see some of my own unhealed wounds. And what I would reflect to my clients, the same as what my therapist reflected to me, is, okay, that's great. I'm glad that feels like you've moved on and you've overcome that. Why are you here? What's bringing you in? Because 9 times out of 10, what's bringing you in now is related back to that moment. And the fact that you bring it up, you're thinking about it, it's on your mind, it crosses your mind from time to time, shows just how deeply it did affect you. And though you may feel like you've overcome it, chances are there's something that it produced in you that you're not liking today. Whether that's insecurities, fear, anxiety, depression, irritability, and frustration. Oftentimes it's connected to those unhealed parts of ourselves that we have tried to just suppress, dismiss, and move on from. So I want us to take a moment this week and stay on this topic of healing love by continuing to still heal love through addressing our wounds. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stop hiding behind the mask facades, the personas, the lies that we tell ourselves so that we can continue living in a way that feels right or feels productive, when in actuality, it's holding us back in ways that maybe we are not so readily apparent or aware of. So I'm gonna invite you guys into this challenge that I'm gonna be doing this week. One of the things that came of my own epiphanies these past 2 weeks is the areas of my life that are not just still hurt or holding on to resentment or unforgiveness or anger, but it was also holding on to mask in attempts to hide. So, if you'd like to venture out of your norm and step outside of your typical way of going through day to day, putting on the facade of bubbly happiness, and you want to just get real with yourself this week or weekend, I want to challenge you to find a time to create a piece of art that depicts the wounds you hide. This piece of art that you create can be a picture, a painting, a collage, a poem, a song, any type of art, sculptures, whatever you want to do. But create a piece of art that depicts the wounds you had. Now, the first part of that might require you to take several steps back and say, okay, well, what are some wounds that I've been hiding? I've named a few of mine. I encourage you to jot down a few of your own. And this isn't something that you have to share with anybody. If you want to, sure. But I just encourage you to make sure it's someone that is safe, someone you trust, someone who also has done their own inner work, so that it doesn't create opportunities for unhealthy ideas or invalidation or maladaptive, or encouragement to resort back to maladaptive strategies and mindsets to happen or to keep reoccurring. We're trying to undo that. So just make sure that the person you share with is someone who you can say is genuinely safe, secure, and healthy for you to go to. But the point is to write down, what are those wounds you've been hiding? This can be emotional wounds, spiritual wounds, mental wounds, physical wounds, social wounds, wounds related to love or wounds related to specific relationships. It could be wounds related to unforgiveness towards yourself or wounds related to unforgiveness towards someone else. It could be grief, it could be loss, it could be frustration, it could be anger, undealt with anger or rage. What are the wounds that you are covering up? Write them down and think about what type of art you want to create. You can do and create whatever you want, but the point is that you capture what wounds you listed. The point of creating this art piece that depicts the wounds you've hidden is so that, number one, we can take them out of hiding. They become a lot more real once they're physical or visible, whether that is through writing or art, dance, song, a poem, painting, sculpting, whatever you choose. We now have to look at it. And that's the first part of uncovering it. It's starting to look at it, assess what it looks like, assess how it makes you feel. I encourage you, as you are creating this piece of art, to think about what emotions come up for you and incorporate details that represent those emotions. That's it. That is the challenge. Because the first part is acknowledgement, and that's all we're doing this week. And sure, this might bring up some uncomfortable emotions, to say the least. It's probably an understatement. It'll likely bring up some very painful, distressing emotions or feelings or memories. That's okay. Don't run from it. Don't run from it. Because we are confronting it right now. Acknowledge what it's made you feel. Acknowledge what it is. Acknowledge all the things that are coming up. And if you need to take breaks, do that. Listen to your body and your mind. Have someone or a support system that you can reach out to if it feels like it's getting to the point where it's unbearable. Take time to breathe and step away from it. Take time to have something for self-care, to pour back into yourself. Things that refill you. Use distraction if necessary, whether that's watching TV, getting a snack, or going out for a walk. Taking some deep breaths or doing a grounding exercise. I think I've shared this one with you guys before. The grounding exercise of 5 by 5 by 5, which is a skill in which you look at 5 different things and pay attention to the details. If there are different colors and shapes, or if there are certain reflections from light that you're seeing, shadows, looking at all the very minute details of it. This can be really helpful to do with, for example, leaves. Seeing the veins in leaves, seeing the parts where it bends or crunches. The next set of 5 is 5 things you can hear. So can you hear the sound of voices? Hopefully people that are actually around you. If it's not people that are actually there, please go consult with a provider urgently. And that provider can be at a hospital or a therapist, but talk to someone about that. And it could also be sounds that you hear, such as the clock. I like using that because most of the time we tune out clocks, but try to sit and really tune into that. Noticing what you hear in your environment, or maybe just outside your environment, above you, around you, even closer to you. For example, if you have a bracelet that you're fidgeting with, is it clicking? Is it making any type of chiming noises? And then the last set of 5 is 5 things you feel. I like to encourage my clients to start with what they feel on their body. Maybe they can feel their glasses resting on their face, or they feel the warmth of the jacket or shirt they're wearing, or maybe it feels a little itchy or uncomfortable. Next, noticing how do your feet feel in your shoes, or what do you feel beneath your feet, on the floor? Does it feel soft, rough, cold, warm? Touching whatever is in your environment to help you kind of come back to center, the here and now moment. And placing the art piece away if necessary. That's just one. There are tons of other skills you can Google, just typing in grounding exercises or mindfulness activities, and you'll find a host of them that you can try out if this particular piece of art is becoming too distressing. And please, if it's bringing up thoughts of suicidality, or you're starting to have thoughts or feelings like you want to harm yourself because of what memories are being triggered and brought up, reach out to crisis support services. Call 911. Call someone in your support system that you know you can reach out to and get in contact with. Take the time to actually attend to what you're needing if you are at a point of crisis. So that might mean calling the crisis text line or texting START, START, to 8274141. Maybe you reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline if you're feeling a lot of feelings of being overwhelmed with suicidal ideation or thoughts of wanting to relieve the pain through self-harm. You can contact them through the 800 number 273-8255. There are many resources, many systems available to you to help you with that. And of course, you could also visit my website where many of them are listed for different populations, whether it's that you want to speak to someone who resonates or relates to you culturally or spiritually. All of those resources are listed on the website I've shared before, which is forthekingdominc.com. And I'll also list all of these resources at the bottom of this podcast. Of course, I can't remember all of them right now, but I wanted to mention that just so you know that they're available. And it might be a sign that maybe it's time to give therapy a try if you are noticing those feelings coming up. There's no shame in it. And I know for some cultural groups, there's a lot of hesitancy to seek support services, especially when it comes to therapists, because the field of psychology hasn't had the brightest history. And there's been a lot of problematic research done on minority or marginalized populations. So I understand, I get it. I understand the hesitancy. And I also want to challenge you to still give it a try. As I've said before to you guys, therapists are like shoes. If the shoe doesn't fit, you take it back. You don't keep it or suffer with it. You go get a shoe that fits you. Likewise, go get a therapist that suits you, that fits you and your needs. Again, all these links, if you scroll down, will be at the bottom of this podcast and available to you, as well as the shortened version of the crisis hotlines, because that is just a lot more efficient. Of course, I know the long phone number, but not the shorter one. In addition to that, one thing that I want to also remind you guys of is that it is okay to check out. And that's something that I wish someone had told me sooner these past 2 weeks. It's okay to unplug, not just from social media, but it's okay to take a step back from the responsibilities around you. You're going to be a lot more effective that way. Yes, I get it. Your job is really important, or you have bills that you need to attend to. Take a step back, because you'll think so much more clearly and strategically with a clear mind and with stress, at least at a reduced level. It may not fully go away, but when you take that time to just come back to center, to breathe, to attend to what you need in that moment, then you'll be able to revisit and readdress all the responsibilities and everything else with a better, healthier, clearer mind. I think I'll leave it there. And of course, I hope that you guys are able to take, if not one nugget or 2 nuggets, but something away from this podcast episode. And if nothing else, I just want you to know that you're loved, and it's okay to take time to heal. You don't have to hide your wounds. It's okay to address them. It will be painful. It will be uncomfortable. But speaking from the other side, it'll be so worth it. And it'll feel so much better. Kings and queens, I love y'all. And I really want you guys to thrive. Not just interpersonally, socially, and mentally, but emotionally, I want you to thrive in your healing. So, let's take the time to stop hiding our wounds and start confronting them. And if nothing else, remember, a little faith helps.